Pawning off control of the TARDIS to me, eh, Ed? No. You're still controlling it. Of course, we're between genres, but... Oh, I see. The strong reality is too much. We need to land in a genre, and soon. Which one, Ed? I need to establish contact with the others. I need to do a review first to stabilize everything. Fortunately, we still have one game in the Myst series left to review, Myst 5 End of Ages, which, as its name implies, and as the Miller brothers outright said, is the last game in the Myst series. But Myst 5 is quite a bit different from the other games in the Myst series, and before we talk about that, I think we actually need to talk about something else related to Myst. Another, well, not really a game, it's more of a, well, we'll figure out what in a moment, but something else. And that something is called Uru. Yes, Uru. So what is Uru? Well, between the release of Exile and Revelation, Cyan released Uru, which was an idea that they had been working on since the release of Riven, and is part of the reason why Exile and Revelation were designed by other game companies. And Uru wasn't really meant to be a part of the Myst series. It was related to Myst, but it was also a departure from those games, which is why it's subtitled Ages Beyond Myst. For one thing, it takes place in present day, a couple of centuries after the events of the other Myst games, and it also allows players to create their own unique avatars, providing the illusion that they themselves are moving through the game. The name Uru could be translated to you are you. You are yourself, not this mysterious stranger of the Myst games past, but actually yourself experiencing this thing that's happening. They wanted to take what really made Myst and Riven special, the immersive experience, and take it one step further, making it look as though you were actually moving through the world of the Dunny. The original idea behind Uru was that it would be an online multiplayer game, giving you the opportunity to explore and interact with other players. However, the live portion of the game has been very much hit or miss over the years, costing Cyan a great deal of time and money, and very nearly sinking the company altogether. As of the filming of this video, there is a version of Myst Live on the Cyan website for free, and it has gained something of a cult following. But as for myself, I only ever played the single-player game that was released between Exile and Revelation, Uru Ages Beyond Myst. In this game, you start in the Cleft, which is where Atris grew up as a child and where his grandmother Anna, before him, also grew up before she left there to venture down into the world of the Dunny, as documented in the second Myst book, Myst, the Book of Tiana. You, along with other players, have felt called to this place, wanting to learn more about these people called the Dunny. Or, as it's pronounced in this game now, the Dunny, because Dunny is apparently slang for toilet in Australia or something, so they started pronouncing it Dunny. However, I'm still going to pronounce it Dunny because that's how I learned it, and it's just how I feel comfortable saying it, so sorry Australia, feel free to giggle inappropriately. In this game, the Dunny and Atris and Catherine and Yisha and basically all of the things that you experienced in the first 4 Myst games are all real. They are all things in the world, and you are part of a larger group learning more about them. Your first task, of course, is to discover your task. As with any Myst game, you aren't given a clear objective at the very beginning, and so all you can really do is explore. Eventually you come across a recording left by Atris' daughter Yisha, and you find that you are basically going to be exploring 4 ages of the Dunny and just kind of learning more about them. Appropriately enough for this journey, Yisha has left you journey cloths, 7 distinct cloths with a spiral handprint symbol on them that you need to find in each age, as well as the cleft that you are now in, to continue on your journey. Once you have found the 7 cloths and touched them, you have to find a doorway, which also has that symbol on it, and that will then transport you to what I think is supposed to be the Star Fissure. This is the same phenomenon that Atris fell through at the end of Myst, the Book of Atris, and the fissure that he refers to in his monologue at the beginning of the Myst game, and that you fall into at the end of Riven. Your ultimate goal here is to collect 4 pillars, 1 for each age. So yeah, it's pretty abstract. Like, with the other Myst games, there's a tangible goal. Find the blue and red pages, trap Gen in the prison book, get Relishon back from Saavedro, rescue Yisha from Cirrus and Akinar. They're all things that are rooted in some sort of human reality, but this really isn't that. The game is almost entirely exploration. Of course, you do solve puzzles and discover more of the story as you go along, like any other Myst game, and there is a way to complete the game, but there's not actually a way to lose the game. There's not a point where you have to make a decision, and depending on what decision you make, you might come across a bad ending, like is the case in the other Myst games. So there aren't really any stakes here, and it's a little weird to even call this a game. It's more of a supplementary experience. Basically, Uru is to the Myst games what the Pottermore website is to the Harry Potter series, or what the Silmarillion is to the Lord of the Rings series. It's just extra stuff. It's something that has to do with the world, which if you are really, really into it, you might get some enjoyment out of it. But I do think it's easy to see why this game, unlike the other games in the Myst series, had a pretty lukewarm response, both critically and commercially. The ages and puzzles in this game are really only okay. They're kind of interesting, but they basically do the same thing that the ages and puzzles of Myst 5 would eventually do, and those ages and puzzles are much, much better. A lot of the puzzles are pretty tedious as well, partly because you don't really have an end goal, so you can't really see why you're doing this thing, and partly because a lot of the puzzles rely on your physical presence as an avatar. Again, the avatar is meant to make the experience more immersive. It's meant to be you are you exploring the world. But I feel like it actually has kind of the opposite effect, and this has a lot to do with just how clunky the avatar interface is. You can't actually toggle back and forth between third-person and first-person viewpoints, so you can make it feel like you're playing a regular Myst game, but you still do have a physical presence in the world that you don't really have in the other Myst games. This means that occasionally you have to run or jump to get to a place where you need to go. Occasionally you also have to manipulate objects to solve puzzles, but you can't actually pick them up and move them, so you have to literally just kind of shove them with your body as you walk. And it gets old after a while, especially if you have to have them set in a particular way and in a particular place. Also, because you have a physical presence in this world, it is possible to put yourself in physical danger. Sometimes you fall off a cliff or fall into a lake of boiling lava, and when that happens, you automatically link back to a place called Relto, which is basically a home age that is unique to every person who visits it. This age was written by Yisha to specifically be this way, and it's basically your hub through all of this. You can always link back to the Relto age because unlike other ages where you leave the book behind, here you always carry the book with you on your hip. This is also where you keep all of the linking books to all the ages that you visit, and also various journals that give you other important information like in any other Myst game. And Relto is nice, I guess. It's nice to have kind of a central hub to always come back to, but at the same time it does serve to lower the stakes even more because you can always just up and quit and go back to your Relto. And ultimately, I think this is why this game is the least memorable for me, and also why it took me the longest to get through. Not because the puzzles are particularly challenging, but just because I didn't feel any particular drive to continue to solve them. I do think that Uru has its place in the Myst canon, but only if you're really hardcore into Dunny history and culture. And honestly, for me, I like the Dunny more as a mysterious race that we only really see hints of in other games, and Uru isn't really an engaging enough experience to hold my interest. It's very much a niche thing, and strangely enough, I'm actually not in that niche. I prefer the continuing story of Atris and his family as opposed to the somewhat stale drama of the downfall of the Dunny. On the worth meter, I'd give this one a worth playing a bootleg copy. Uru does, however, serve to connect the events of the first 4 Myst games to the last Myst game, Myst 5 End of Ages, which is something of an anomaly in the Myst canon. Where the first 4 Myst games follow Atris and his family, with the story being somewhat continuous, Uru jumps ahead again a century and a half later after the events of Uru. Atris is an old man, Catherine has long since died, and Yisha is a grown woman with a better understanding of age writing than perhaps anyone has ever possessed. It's a pretty good bet, therefore, that you're probably not playing the same person that you were playing in the first 4 Myst games. There is some speculation as to who you are actually playing in this game, but since that requires me to delve a little bit more deeply into the history of the Dunny than I really want to in this video, I'm not going to. In addition, where the other 4 games use pre-rendered graphics and video of actors playing the characters to provide the immersive experience, this game has you moving through a fully 3D environment with computer-animated characters that use character mapping on real actors' faces to make it seem more like they are real people. The gameplay, however, is pretty much the same as the first 4 games. You solve puzzles, explore these ages, uncover more and more of the story, and eventually have to make some decision at the end of the game. In this game, you start in the world of the Dunny, in the same place where you found Atris at the end of the first Myst game. As we saw in Myst 3 Exile, Atris has been trying to rebuild the Dunny civilization, and now the future of that civilization is in your hands. Because it's been nearly 2 centuries, the nature of linking and age writing has evolved somewhat. Atris' daughter has developed into a powerful age writer, and we see hints of this in Revelation with Serenia and also some cryptic things said in Uru. But part of this also comes from Yisha's understanding of a non-human species known as the Baro, or sometimes called the Least. These are very powerful creatures who are capable of, among other things, linking without the use of a linking book and even controlling the elements to a certain extent. The Baro, however, can be controlled through the use of a tablet, which you can unlock by bringing 4 slates to a central hub, which is kind of simultaneously in existence in 4 different ages, actually 5 different ages, as well as Dunny. It's weird and complicated. The slates can also control the Baro to a certain extent through the use of symbols that they can read and understand. You find these symbols throughout the game, and most of them are locations of pillars where you can put the slate and also link to, but some of them are actually instructions for the Baro to use their power in some way. In one age, they can make steam rise from the ground, in another they can make it rain, in another they can bring about a huge windstorm, and in one they can actually make time itself move faster. These abilities become necessary to solve the various puzzles in their respective ages. Once you've unlocked the tablet, you have to figure out what you're going to do with it, and this is where the exploration aspect of the game comes into play. In addition to the 4 ages that you visit, you also spend a lot of time in the Dunny homeworld, and you explore it through the great shaft that once connected the surface to the Dunny civilization. As you make your way through, solving puzzles as you go, of course, you have encounters with 2 different characters. One, of course, is Yisha, who has also unlocked the tablet but was deemed unworthy to use it due to the decision that she made with it. So now she can't touch it, hence her calling upon you, whoever you are. Throughout your exploration of the Dunny, you find pages from Yisha's journal where she basically recaps her life story and the life story of her family, so it kind of gives you a recap of the other 4 games and, to a certain extent, the 3 Myst books as well. But as you read through this journal, you kind of sense a certain unraveling, a sense of her starting to lust for the power of the tablet, hearkening back to the feelings that Cirrus and Achenar and Gen had. Specifically, she believes herself to be prophesized as something called the Grower, who is supposed to basically save the Dunny civilization. The other person you encounter throughout the game is a man named Escher, played by David Ogden Stiers. Escher is one of the Dunny survivors who Atris found, and he appears periodically both to warn you about Yisha and how dangerous she's becoming, and also to give you a little bit of history about the Dunny or whatever age you happen to be visiting at that time. Occasionally, he'll also give you some hints about how to progress through the game or solve a puzzle. And through Escher and the ages that you visit, you get a pretty good picture of the Dunny people, both their scientific curiosity and their hunger for exploration and discovery, and also their arrogance, their belief in their own superiority that we saw in characters like Cirrus and Achenar and Gen. The decision that you ultimately make, therefore, is less about Atris and his family and more about the future of the Dunny civilization and what path they will ultimately take. Because this game is such a departure from the first 4 Myst games, when I first played it, I didn't care for it very much. I didn't really understand why they would use computer-animated characters instead of the real-life actors I was used to, and because the story wasn't about Atris and his family specifically, I didn't connect to it as much. In fact, they kind of lead you to believe that Atris is dead at the beginning of the game, although it later turns out that he's not. But playing it again, I find that I severely misjudged this game the first time I played it, and really the direction they took it is really the only direction they could have. have. At this point, we've really done all we can with Atris and his family, which I think is part of the reason why games like Exile and Revelation fall as flat as they do. They don't really add anything new to the story, and really the ultimate goal of those games is just to return everything to the status quo. But in this game, you're actually defining the status quo. You are deciding the fate of Atris and his people, and basically acting as the culmination of Atris' life's work. The slates in the tablet also add a nice touch to the gameplay, although they are a little finicky at times. But they add a nice extra layer to the puzzle gameplay, and it does indicate how far Dunny technology has progressed in 200 years. In addition, they brought over the journal and the camera from Myst 4, and they also added a new journal which actually records all of the different monologues that you hear from the characters, so you can go back and read over what Yisha or Escher said to you in case you forget it. But as always, what really does it for me is the story that you discover along the way, and I think this game actually comes the closest to matching Riven in its complexity, at least as far as the story is concerned. Each of the 4 ages that you visit gives you a different perspective on the Dunny. The icy prison age of Tagira, or the scientific exploration of Toldomir, the technological experience on Nolaben, or the cruel gaming of Lakion. You get a many-faceted picture of this civilization, and it meshes nicely with the characters that we've gotten to know over the past 4 games. Uru kind of does this too, but Myst 5 manages to say a lot more with a lot less, showing us the ages of these people and many of the things that they did. Ultimately, I think it's a fitting end to the Myst series, and on the worth meter, I would give it a worth multiple playthroughs. And with that, I have reviewed all the games of the Myst series. Thank you for indulging me in my little obsession, and now, if I'm not mistaken, yes, things have stabilized. We're still not out of limbo. We need something more, something to connect us to a genre, a context. That might be something. But that requires so much explanation, and I won't be able to do it alone. Arcana, you're talking to yourself again. Ed?
Long time no see, Wizard Man. Glad I was finally able to establish a connection.
Where are you?
Same place as you. For some reason we can't occupy the same physical space here, but
I think I figured out a way to communicate with the others. I'm trying to land us in a new genre, but I'm gonna need a little help. What can I do? I want to try something. A collaborative beta test of sorts. I think the review that you have in mind will be perfect for it. I'll try to get in touch with Reg. You do what you need to prepare. Very well. We'll meet back here in a few days' time when you're ready. And Ed, thank you.
thank me till we're out of this.
Well, it seems we're not quite done with the Myst world after all. We've looked at all the individual stories, but if you'll indulge me once more, I think I have one more thing that might tie everything together, so get ready.